So we've had a few clients over the course of the last few weeks that have found themselves in a precarious position where they have their house for sale, they've already purchased firm on another property, and the closing of that is coming up to the point where they haven't been able to close their current home. Obviously, there's going to be some options depending on what everybody's variables are and what their individual situation is going to be moving forward. What do you recommend off the top?
First thing, Matt, we always recommend checking with your realtor to find out if you have more time. So if you can get an extension on the closing of your purchase, that will give you more time to potentially, get the sale to come through or get another offer perhaps coming in the door.
What do you think would be an ideal time frame for an extension? What would be looking for? What would they be needing?
I mean, in this day and age right now, we're seeing 2 weeks to a month, and that's rare. I mean, we would have never been able to get away with that in the past 2 years. It would have been a day or two maximum. But now we've seen some price reductions, some almost like abatements, and then we've also seen some, 2 week and 1 month extensions.
Yeah.
So, now that's not possible because sometimes it's not possible, or they've already gone through that extension. Yeah. Right. Now it's really going back to the drawing board and finding out, what is the goal with the property that you're selling? Is your intention to still proceed with the sale after the purchase closes, or are you now going to convert that from a property you're going to sell to maybe a rental property, an income property?
So in a situation where the intention initially is to sell the current home as a means of pulling out what they need from that to move forward with that purchase, what do we recommend?
2 things need to be done. Number one, of course, you have to secure the purchase. So that means going back to the drawing board and finding out, okay, can this purchase qualify without the sale of this property?
Yep.
Number one, because it's not going to be sold on the day that it's going to close. But the most important thing also is to ensure that you can get the down payment, because again, most people are relying on the sale to close to get the funds for the down payment of the purchase. So now that's no longer happening. I now need to borrow those funds from that property that's up for sale. So that will mean us trying to find some financing for that, right?
And in the case where we don't have the time, where an extension can't be granted for an additional 2 weeks or 4 weeks, which is what we realistically need to complete the refinance of the current home to move forward with the new purchase, what happens in a time crunch instead?
I mean, we have to move quickly. That means typically that'll be some secondary or some sort of financing on the property that you're trying to sell. That'll happen quickly. It is expensive, but it's temporary, right? Because the intention is to sell. So we do have sources for that, and typically brokers have sources for that. Now, to close the purchase, you're going to have to go back to that lender that's got the mortgage or has issued the approval for that purchase to ensure that they're okay with funds coming from
a secondary source.
Yeah, secondary source, right? And so if these clients have a mortgage with the bank, oftentimes the banks don't have options. So again, really important to know who you're working with, right? You're working with someone who's going to have options. Oftentimes bankers have limited options because they have to go to the bank to ask permission. They don't have access to secondary funds or any other types of alternative financing. So again, as you know, Matt, we always preach about finding a broker that's going to be looking out for you and has access to funds.
Someone transparent, someone's got your back ultimately.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so in the event where someone is going to keep it as a rental property, so they're going to convert the property they're selling as a rental property for longer term. Now that also probably requires us to get something more permanent in terms of financing on that property they're trying to sell. They're going to take it off the market. We're going to do a refinance, which means that we're going to take the arrange new financing on that property, which is going to include the down payment that you're going to need to close your purchase.
So pull the equity out of that.
Pull the equity right out of that. And then that equity will go towards the down payment of that property you're purchasing. So we're doing 2 transactions in that case. We're doing the refinance, pull the equity out for the down payment, close the purchase, and that can all get done as well.
Vince, can you talk about the exit strategy once somebody borrows the temporary funds to close what they'll need off of their new property? What does that look like for them to be made whole again, essentially?
So it's very important that secondary financing or any financing that's being placed on the property being sold is flexible, meaning that It can be repaid easily. It won't have hefty prepayment terms, so that if it's 2 weeks after close or 2 months after close, that you can repay this money back and not be paying interest for an equivalent of 6 months or a year. Because a lot of secondary financing can be quite expensive.
Yeah.
So you're better off paying a little bit more per day to have that flexibility built in.
Yeah, and the alternative, obviously, to not having access to what you mentioned as more expensive funding is potentially leaving yourself open to losing a deposit, potentially walking away from the property altogether, and you know what might come from that, legally speaking, as well.
Yeah, I think of it as a bridge, essentially,
Yep.
right? Everyone, sort of understands what bridge financing is, but a bank will only bridge when there are two firm sales. So you've got a firm purchase and a firm sale. In this case, you have a firm purchase, but you don't have a firm sale.
That's why we're here. Yeah.
That's why we're here. So now you're still bridging, but it's an alternative type bridge. It's not bridged by the bank. So, but still needs to be very flexible.
Yeah.
Also want to mention is about we always say amongst us is picking your horse, right?
Yeah.
Which is really
very important. Yeah.
So we always tell clients, when they're going through something like this, there is a sense of panic and urgency, and we understand that. But what's really important is, when you're choosing someone during this point in time where things are very, tight and there's a heightened level of stress, you need to make sure that you're choosing the right person that works with you. And it's important not to be playing the field.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So interview wisely is what we tell our clients, and make sure that whoever you're going to choose, let them know that's who you're going to work with, and don't start working with everybody.
Sure. The process of that also, I would imagine, takes longer then. You're also waiting for multiple people to get back to you, and not maybe potentially hearing the exact same answer from everybody across the board, which has you second guessing yourself even more, making a confusing or anxious situation even more anxious, more confusing. So yeah, I'd say no matter what kind of financing one is looking at, whether it be private or conventional, believe in who you're selecting to run with you and to have your back ultimately, I guess, makes the most sense.
Yeah, so choosing wisely means that you're looking for someone who's going to give it to you straight, and is going to be able to execute, right? Sometimes, hearing the best rate or something, this can be done, this can be done, this can be done, is very hard. Like for us, we will never tell someone what is possible until we have the information in front of us.
Sure.
Right? So, and I think that's the wisest way to go, because once we have the information, then we know what is possible. We know we can paint the image for the client and manage expectations and execute very quickly.
I know that our process has been something that we've hung our hat on forever, and we believe in it because it's proven. It works, regardless of the situation, regardless of what anybody is coming to us with their certain sense of variables within their scenario. Our process cuts through it all. What would you say to what we've seen out there, especially recently, with what a 10-minute approval rings like in your ears, or when you see that or hear that from a client that they've been pre-approved by just submitting an application online somewhere, but haven't spoken to anybody? What does that say to you? What do you think of when you hear that?
Well, A, drives me crazy, and B, I feel bad for clients because they actually are equating a pre-approval to be the same across the board, and it's not. Really, a pre-approval is going to depend heavily on how it's been done and who it's been done with.
Sure.
So the level of detail that someone goes through in a pre-approval is really important, especially today in this day and age. With clients being caught, we're just talking about that between a purchase and a sale, and it's oftentimes because they haven't been pre-approved.
Sure.
Or haven't been pre-approved to the level that they should have been, because we need to look at, well, how much are you going to sell this property for in a conservative way?
Yeah.
Look at a conservative price, and what are you going to qualify for today going forward? It heavily depends on what the qualifying rate is. We were just talking about this morning as a team, is that is a changing number almost on a weekly basis.
Yeah, now more than ever.
Right? It was static for years, and so everyone got used to that, and now pre-approvals are not the same. So doing them online, I caution people doing them online. I caution people doing them for 10 minutes, even live with someone over the phone. With brokers and bankers who don't ask for any documents up front, I caution them heavily, especially in this market, to search for someone who's going to do it properly.
Yeah, and I think with what we would do in ours almost gives better depth to an overall financial situation, not just in the now, but for what the plans would be down the road, what the future is going to be, long-term viability of the home that they're moving into, and what their goals are long-term. And if you're not answering any of these questions in your pre-approval, it speaks to the longevity or lack thereof of what you're going to get done, I think, successfully.
Yeah, I mean, same thing on the investment side. Would you give your money to someone to invest it if they're not asking you questions?
Sure.
Sight unseen, just give it to them after 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Hard pressed to find someone who would.
Yeah.
I really think people should take that same sort of philosophy and apply it on the mortgage side.
Yeah.
Because how much time is that person, that professional, investing in you to get to know you, get to know your goals, get to know your paperwork, to be able to then put those numbers down. And not only give them to you, but explain to you why those numbers are those numbers. Give you the rationale. The why is really important.
Sure.
And educate you not only on those numbers, but on the process to follow, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and then moving forward for them to know who that person is, wherever it is that they're working for. They know who Vince Scarselli is, they know who Matt Arruda is, they know who Cassandra Fortier is, and in every situation, they have our cell numbers, and they have a multitude of ways to get a hold of us. If there are any kind of issues along those lines. Not necessarily the case on a 10-minute application sent online through a third party that you just know the name of, but not the person behind it, I guess.
Yeah, so to give you an example, you've pre-approved someone for $650,000 purchase price, right, with a certain percentage of down payment. That's based on certain characteristics of that application. You've done the due diligence, you have all the documents. Now, what if that client then all of a sudden needs to make a change?
Yep.
Now they have to buy for $665,000, right? If you've done a 10-minute pre-approval, you're not going to be able to make those changes quickly.
Sure.
Where we've done them, we have a spreadsheet. You have it ready to go. Client calls you and says, Matt, is this possible? Here's the MLS.
Yes.
Is this possible? Now we're doing it live for a
Yeah.
client, and it's a lot easier because we've already put the work in up front, right?
And everyone's got the confidence now, on both ends.
Yeah.
We can speak to it confidently, they can spend confidently, should they choose to. Everybody wins.
Bring the
That's-
realtor in on the
absolutely.
conversation, real estate agents.
Accountants, all the rest. Get everybody on the same team.